Hey there, Eli again, coming at you from the Coral Room of Coventry, here today with another episode of What is a Coral? I know it's been months since I've done one of those. Today I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about one of my favorite, just an interesting LPS coral. Could be considered SPS, but for all intents and purposes, probably more likely described as an LPS coral, and that is the Turbinaria family of corals, also known as scroll corals. Here in front of me, I have 5 different types of scroll corals, and actually each and every one of these was grown at our coral farm down the road. These, as the name suggests, will form a really tight scrolling pattern as they grow. You can kind of see on these front 2 especially that they're kind of starting to get that cool pattern to them going, but these are honestly a really easygoing plating / scrolling coral for most of your aquarium hobbyists. This is one of the easier types of corals that takes on that scrolling or plating pattern. Definitely a very beginner-friendly scrolling coral. And this comes in a bunch of different colors, shapes, and textures. Most of these scroll corals in front of me, or these Turbinarias, are going to be fairly easygoing. I would shoot for anywhere kind of moderate light, moderate flow, or above for these corals. Generally, the better amount of flow that you give them, the more scroll pattern that they will pick up. But generally, if given enough space to grow and given the time, they will develop those tight scroll patterns as well. So placement for these guys, I do somewhere probably mid to lower end of the tank. Generally, if they get a moderate amount of light and a decent amount of flow, they are going to develop that really cool scroll pattern. Sometimes they'll develop almost a bowl-shaped vase pattern as well as they grow out. And they generally are not a terribly aggressive coral either. Most of these types that you see in front of me are not very aggressive corals, with the exception of this one in the back right corner here. This one is what we would call a pagoda cup. It is another type of Turbinaria that gets those really large polyps that kind of resemble the polyps of a Duncan. This one is a little more aggressive than the other types would be, so I would give it a little bit more room from surrounding corals than you would with some of the other scrolls. However, these guys generally do get along quite well with the rest of your coral inhabitants and can be placed pretty close by neighboring corals as well. Generally, these guys are going to be pretty much fully photosynthetic, so you don't really have to worry about feeding in addition to just your normal routine. As stony corals, however, it is important to make sure especially alkalinity, calcium, salinity are all very stable to achieve the best, most solid growth and consistent results with these types. These corals do come in quite a wide variety of colors. Most of these colors of the corals in front of me kind of do wash out in the blue lights. A lot of these do look a lot better when you're running a little more whites in your aquarium, but this variety here is kind of a golden brown with a really cool yellow rim. This one is a nice purple under white lights with that yellow rim as well. And we've got a couple green varieties. That pagoda cup gets some nice hints of blue to it. And my personal favorite of all these scroll corals here, this is called a Turbinaria heroensis. This coral is just really interesting to me because it has a lot thicker of a skeleton, larger polyps, and it gets these cool finger-like projections in the center, which give it a interesting touch. Generally, if this gets a little lower light, those branches will get even longer and more intricate with time. So it just adds an even different texture, different appearance to this coral as well, which I really appreciate. Also worth note, every single one of these, as I mentioned earlier, was grown at our coral farm. These species tend to be a decent candidate for aquaculture. They may not be the fastest growing stony coral, but they are very steady growers, very tolerant of being cut into smaller pieces. Generally, it's most appropriate to cut these with a bandsaw, maybe a pair of bone cutters, but usually a bandsaw, and these pieces generally will take very well and will start to grow pretty easily for you as well. So definitely a great aquaculture candidate, a cool species that can be kept for a really long time in your aquariums and traded on with fellow aquarists down the road. As always, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed this little series on the scroll coral. Please let us know in the comment section below if you have comments, suggestions for future videos. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, keep on reefing.